The only witness to a horrible event that unfolded inside this house is too young to tell investigators what happened. A 1-year-old baby girl was found crawling on the floor inside this Northwest home.
We were called here by a couple who came to check on the welfare of the occupants at the house here on Dalhart Hill. Once we arrived, our members went into the house and found 6 people in the house, 5 deceased. And 1 alive.
The dad found inside the home 2 children, aged 4 and 6, 3 adults between the ages 30 and 35.
None of the deaths were natural. We've got homicide on the way to take over the investigation.
What a tragic story. Inexplicable, incomprehensible, and the more the details come out, the more those 2 words seem to best define what's happened. How do you deal with a reality like this? I mean, even the police can't process it. Calgary Police Chief Rick Hansen said in the Globe this week, quote, "When you have a crime scene that is this horrendous, when it's this traumatic, when there's a family involved, there's just so many unanswered questions." So many unanswered questions. What happened? And why did this happen? And maybe most haunting, why does this continue to happen? And I know the details are coming out, and eventually more and more answers will come to us. We'll probably find out chronologically what happened, and we're even now starting to discover psychologically what played out in that family's home. But on the theological front, the question that I really want an answer for, I'm not sure we're going to get clarity. Why do things like this happen in our city, in our world, God? And what is it in us human beings when we're involved with the malady that allows, that impels, that moves us to make such huge mistakes? Why do you tolerate this, God? Allow evil to prosper in your beautiful, good, green, earthly garden. Why these bad seeds? Why let them grow? Why did you just stand there in the Lall family home this week? How in the world will anybody explain this to a 20-year-old or 18-year-old little girl 20 or 18 years from now? What happened to your family when you were just a baby? To questioning humanity here in this room and in our city now and throughout time, Jesus spoke a parable to people who wonder why the world sometimes plays out the way it does. He spoke these mysterious words. Mysterious in that they don't, I'll tell you, don't answer the question, not completely. Jesus says, present tense, these words: God's kingdom is like a farmer who planted good seed in his field. That night, while his hired men were asleep, his enemy sowed thistles all through the wheat and slipped away before dawn. When the first green shoots appeared and the grain began to form, the thistles showed up too. And the farmhands came to the farmer and said, "Master, that was clean seed that you planted, wasn't it? Where did these thistles come from?" And he answered, "Some enemy did this." And the farmhands asked, well, should we weed out the thistles? And he said, no. If you weed out the thistles, you'll pull up the wheat too. Let them grow together until harvest time. Then I'll instruct the harvesters to pull up the thistles and tie them in bundles for the fire. Then gather the wheat and put it in the barn. Yeah, parables don't answer things the way I want them answered. I want to know definitively, God, how this works. And this one doesn't. It says, sure, some enemy did this. And I believe in that an enemy, a very personal, powerful force for evil, moves in this world. And what Joshua Lall, in his mental breakdown, was being compelled by was that evil. But for God to put the blame on an enemy when God is God, and God is all-powerful, and God is all good, that's every atheist, every disgruntled, suffering former Christian's best argument for how in the world could God even exist. Just doesn't explain it that some enemy did this. Part of me gets mad. At times, and I know maybe you, have had moments where pain, it's never right, but with a certain perspective or with time, it can even make a bit more sense. And I've had moments where it's like a lightning flash happens, and all of a sudden you can see reality for what it is, and you sort of get God's scope on things. And you go, okay, I believe that you're there and that you're holding all of this, even if I don't understand it. But the truth is, for any human being, and this logically does make sense, that we do not know the mind of God. And no matter how smart you are, you can't fathom the beginning from the end in terms of what the mind of God is. His ways are beyond our ways, beyond your ways. The farmhands asked, should we weed out the thistles? And the farmer said, no, if you weed the thistles, you'll pull up the wheat too. Let them grow together until harvest time. Good and evil together. Not just good over here and evil over here, but it's intertwined. So intertwined that you cannot uproot the one without destroying the other. And that, I know, is true. I know it's true because I've looked at my own heart. And if you've looked at your own heart, you know it's true that good and evil are a very commingled, intertwined thing in us. I and human beings are capable of incredible good. These magnificent human beings are also capable of terrible, despicable evil. We can say beautiful things to people sometimes, and other times we can say things out of the same mouth comes this salty word, this venomous, and the things that we think sometimes that nobody would. Thank God nobody knows I think that sometimes. And it's all intertwined between good nations and bad nations, and good tribes and bad tribes, and good people and bad people, and the good in you and the not so good in you.